What's up, Duke fans, and welcome to another episode of Duke Blue Central, where unfortunately we're coming at you with our first post-game episode after a loss on the season as Duke goes down in the Champions Classic against the Kentucky Wildcats with a final score of 72-77. Tough game to lose, although I have some good news. I still haven't lost confidence in this Duke team. Really, in some ways maybe, but in a lot of ways, man, this was a game I did feel like Duke should have won. Duke could have pulled out. But in the end, Kentucky had their opportunities, just like Duke did, but Kentucky took advantage of their opportunities, made their open shots, and were able to walk out of the Champions Classic with a win. It's Kentucky's first win against Duke in some years. I think the last time they beat Duke was in 2015. Quite a few years for them, especially given kind of the Champions Classic go around at least every 3 years. Kind of a long time for them to go without beating Duke. But hey, they got one tonight. Tip of the cap to the Kentucky team. They were really well coached tonight, and some of their players had some amazing performances. Andrew Carr had an awesome night, playing 30 minutes and getting 17 points. But let's break down this game because I think the first half a lot of Duke fans were pretty dang happy with, and then second half is where you saw a lot of stuff start to unravel. Excuse me. First half though, you could see cracks of perhaps what was to come in the second half. So first half of this game we shoot 48%, but the big story of the game for me, from a Duke perspective, is going to be 3-point shooting. We shot 25% from three in the first half, and I'm sitting there thinking, I even tweeted this at halftime. Duke was up 9 at the half, with Cooper Flagg sitting the bench for 6+ minutes at the end of the second half. He had to sit down because he had two fouls. One, he fouled a guy on a 3-point shot and then picked up another foul late in the first half. They sat him down for the final 6 minutes, and Duke actually ends up going on a run and extending their lead to 9 before half, all while going 3 for 12 from outside. Man, so I tweeted at halftime. I was feeling very good about this game. I honestly, at half, I don't know that shocked would have been the right word, but I would have been extremely surprised if you told me that Duke was going to go on to lose this game. Just because, I had the utmost confidence, and still really do in a lot of ways, that this is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country, and I just felt like us going 3 for 12 from behind the arc when we were, by the way, some of these shots we were getting were open. Duke did a really good job, I thought, most of the first half of implementing a good offensive scheme of getting into the lane and kicking it out for open threes. They got those open threes. They just missed them. There were a little more probably mid-range shots in this game, a lot of them taken by Cooper Flagg, but boy, a lot of them being made by Cooper Flagg. We'll talk about Cooper here in a little bit, but Cooper had an incredible game today. John Shires called him a warrior in the post-game conference, and I couldn't agree more. I think if you're watching the game tonight, he showed you everything he needed to show you as far as, who's Duke's star this year. It's him and it's no one else. Not that the other guys aren't good. We have some great players. That's not how I intended that to come off. But listen, he's the guy. But anyway, Cooper had some more of those mid-range shots he took tonight, but he made a heck of a lot of them. So I didn't have a huge problem with him taking those, as I've said repeatedly on this podcast. But listen, the defense was great from Duke in the first half. I thought you held Kentucky to 37 points in the first half, and while that's a big total maybe for another team, Kentucky's a team that scored 100 points in 2 consecutive games to open the year. And look, I don't care who the opponent is. If you're scoring 100 2 games in a row, you've got a high-powered offense. And we knew that going into the game. Kentucky lit it up from 3 to start. I think they went 5 for 5 to start the game. Ended up shooting 43% from 3 in the first half. So that's when I'm like, look, Kentucky shoots 43% from 3 in the first half to Duke's 25%, and Cooper Flagg sits the last 6 minutes. Duke still goes into a half up 9. Man, I would have told you that was a recipe for Duke to win this game by 15 or 20 points. And yet Duke ends up, maybe not 20, that's a little ambitious, and yet Duke ends up losing this game. So what happened in the second half? Well, look, maybe the biggest part of it for me is, like I said, I at the half, Duke was shooting 3 for 12 from three, and I thought to myself, look, there's no way we're going to repeat this performance. Well, I was right in some ways, but I was right in the negative way. Duke actually shot considerably worse in the second half from three. Duke went 1 for 11 from three in the second half. That's 9% for those of you quick math people out there. Just an unbelievably bad performance from three. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If Duke makes two more threes, we win this game. And I even think, it was 72, 75, 74 really until the end where we fouled them in like garbage time for them to get 77 points. It was the final score of this game was really 72, 75. Kentucky got some freebies at the end. But I mean, if we make two or three more threes, Duke wins this game. For me, it's as simple as that. There are a lot of things you can point to that you can say, look, this player should have done this in that moment, or, this coaching decision should have been made earlier, or this guy should have been put in instead of this guy. But at the end of the day, this was a game where you shot 17% from three. And frankly, that number is unacceptable from this team, especially when you shoot 23 threes in the game, which, by the way, I'm not unhappy with. I think this team should shoot 25 threes a game. I think there are nights where we should approach 30 threes. I love the strategy of you either have a shot right at the basket or it's a three. I love that strategy, and I think other than Coop, I don't want anybody really taking mid-range shots. Tyrese can shoot some. Caleb could maybe shoot some floaters in the lane, although he didn't do himself any favors tonight. Um, but I love that strategy. I don't think Duke. I did not disagree with a lot of the threes Duke was taking. There were open looks. Some of them were contested, but this is a lethal shooting team. It just is. We know it is. In every game, every exhibition, every practice, every the legitimate two games we've had on the year, all of them, we've been a lethal shooting team. I think the worst we've shot from three is like 37%. So, I mean, you drop down to 17%. That's the three is a big part of Duke's offense, obviously. And again, I think that's a good thing. I think it's an efficient shot when you're hitting it at 35 to 40%. Um, but but sometimes you just have to keep it simple in your head and say, look, I mean, Con Knipple went 1 for 8 from three today. And you just have to ask yourself as a fan, how many more times is that going to happen on the year? Uh, Gosh, I think the answer is not a lot. And maybe if it does happen again, we're more experienced by then to know, okay, we're off tonight. This is how we win. They didn't have that experience tonight, also because of injuries. And look, I'm not sitting here making excuses, especially with 3-point shooting is like that was Duke's fault. That's not an excuse of why we lost. They missed threes. That was their fault. Injuries, on the other hand, maybe you can say they'd be prevented, but they killed us down the stretch too. Common Malawach, who had an awesome game, by the way, he finished with 10.7 rebounds. Could have been more. He would have been in the game longer if not for cramping, which just when you thought Cooper Flagg got over his cramping, the cramping bug bites Malawach this game. But man, Common, we got to give it up for Common for this game. He was playing against a veteran big in Andrew Carr, who had himself a good game against Common. But for large stretches of the game, Carr was going up against Malik Brown, which was a better matchup for him. Um, but Common, yeah, I can't say enough good about Common so far to start the season. I just think he looks like Mark Williams in year two, 3 games into his college career. He looks like end of season Derek Lively already. And Duke has been blessed with a lot of talented, long, big men that block shots and finish at the rim. But a lot of them have taken some time to develop. Common still has some developing to do, yes, but he has more game than either one of those guys did at the start. He finishes perfect, 5 for 5 from the field today, 7 rebounds, 3 of them offensive. 2 blocks and 10 points. Guys, it would have been more had he been in the game. And I might not even hesitate to say if he doesn't have these injuries that Duke wins this game. I think our interior defense was far weaker with him out. And again, he wasn't out because of he had some foul. He had 3 fouls in the game, but I mean, he wasn't out because of foul trouble. He was out because of injury. Which again, I don't want this to sound like excuse making. Sometimes your guys get injured and you have to play better. Malik Brown should have played better in this game. I think he himself would tell you. He's got to come up bigger in these moments. Defensively, he was struggled with fouls from the beginning of this game. I think he got 3 fouls all in the first half really quickly. Look, he had some moments. He finished with 8 rebounds himself, had 5 offensive boards. He did a lot of good things tonight, but I think there were some fouls that he gave up that led to some free throws by Kentucky, and those points can prove critical down the stretch as they did tonight. Kentucky, listen, a lot of credit needs to be given to them as well. At the end of the first half, I was sitting here thinking they're a one-trick pony. All they can do is shoot threes and run, and if they miss threes, they're toast. They proved me wrong a little bit in the second half. They eased up on the threes. They only shot 9 threes in the second half. They went 3 for 9, so 33%. Way better than Duke. But yeah, but they got more touches in the paint. They scored down low. They ended up scoring 40 points in the second half, so only 3 more than they did in the first half. So it's not like Duke's defense just collapsed. And I'm going to be honest, holding Kentucky to 77, I think is an okay formula. If you would have told me they scored that pre-game, I wouldn't have been surprised. I mean, again, this is an offensive juggernaut team. But I did really believe Duke was going to score in the 80s. I just thought Kentucky's defense wasn't all that great, and I still think they have a lot of defensive questions to answer. But they did ratchet up the intensity in the second half. Look, Duke only scored 26 points in the second half. That's unacceptable. But again, I I just think so much of this game can be boiled down to missing your open shots. And we didn't just miss open ones from 3. We missed open inside shots. Those are just kind of harder to track and they're harder to see in the course of a game. But look, I mean, like, if Duke has, and I've said this before about previous Duke teams, Duke has an average shooting night. We win this thing. And we win it comfortably. If Duke finishes shooting what 20%, 25%. All it takes is 2 more threes to win this thing, and really 1 more 3 within the course of the game would put you up 1, maybe with the ball or Kentucky with the ball, depending on how the timing shook out. You never know. It's hard to go back and play the what if game. But that man, I just can't believe how bad this team shot tonight. I'm sitting here a little bit in shock of just. Yes, the Duke lost a game I really felt like they should have won. And I'm not like it's a weird feeling because I honestly, it's like I'm frustrated that we lost, but on the other hand, I'm like I still feel like I have the same level of confidence in this Duke team I had before. It is a little bit of a bummer because as we've talked about on the show, Duke has a heck of a strong non-conference schedule. I mean, the big games were Kentucky. We play Arizona next, then Kansas, then Auburn. You play Arizona away environment. You play Kansas neutral site, Auburn at home. So, like, winning the first one of those takes no, regardless of who your opponent is, winning the first of those 4 tough games takes a lot of pressure off your back to keep winning, because now, especially in that game against Arizona, Duke is really going to be like, guys, this isn't a must win, but it's like we need to win this one. I think, like, if you say Duke goes 2-2 in those tough games, I wouldn't say I'm not like a jumping for joy excited. I think Duke has the capability and will potentially be the favorite in all of those games, maybe except Arizona. They were the favorite tonight. I think like the Vegas betting odds would have had us the favorite in. Well, they'll probably favor Kansas too. So honestly, we probably only would have been the favorite against Kentucky and then against Auburn at home, which I don't know. They had a great one against Houston, but the Cameron factor will factor in there. So Vegas probably has Duke at going 2-2 in this stretch. And you got to ask yourself, like, are you good with that as a Duke fan? It's like it's a really tough it's a really tough schedule, and I really don't see a ton of ACC teams that are going to give this Duke squad trouble. So if we're walking into ACC play with two losses, let's say we lose to Kentucky, and let's say Auburn gets us, and we have wins against Kansas and Arizona. You're the sky is definitely not falling. But again, and this sounds crazy to talk about now, but you do have to think about come March, these early non-conference games and how you play in them does determine, if are you in contention for a number one seed. Losses like this can sometimes knock you off that one seed line and put you to the two. Let's say if Kentucky's at the end of the year with a good record, they're going to have this head-to-head win against us come Selection Sunday. I know that seems wild to talk about right now, but when you play all your non-conference games up top at the beginning of the season, like college basketball is, they come into play. Now, look, if we're sitting here, maybe I'm sitting here talking to you in February, and Duke's got like three losses on the year. It's like Duke's lost four games. We lose two non-con, and then like two random ACC teams beat us. We're gonna. I mean, that's a pretty dang good record. So, look, I didn't think this Duke team was gonna go undefeated, but it is a little bit of a bummer, like losing the first one. Just because now all of a sudden everyone's mind is racing on like, dang, we've really got to get these next ones. But look, I mean, if I'm sitting here on a podcast after an Auburn game talking to you about we went 3-1, I'd be ecstatic about that. I mean, that would be amazing. I don't necessarily think we're going to do that. I think there's some tough games ahead for sure, especially at Arizona. And then Auburn will be a heck of a game. Maybe, which sounds crazy, but I might feel the best against Kansas, who's the number one ranked team right now. But yeah, back to this. I don't want to get off topic too much. I just want to explain, like, it's a weird feeling after this game because on one hand, I just feel like it's a freak loss of like we just shot horribly. I know this is a great shooting team, and sometimes you just shoot really bad, and you got to say, hope we don't do that in March. And if we do, at least we're experienced now and can kind of figure out what to do if it happens again. Now, look, if this happens again in big games, we'll talk about it some more. Like I'm not like this team I really believe is a great shooting team, but we do have to see it in a big game. Like are we just an okay shooting team when it comes to playing better competition? We'll see. Maybe we're a great shooting team against bad teams, but I don't think that's the case. I think as of right now, it's just this was a bad shooting night. You chalk it up to that, you move on. That's one hand. The other hand of the equation is like you lost this game, which a lot of people consider to be your easiest non-conference, kind of the four tough. I don't know that I agree with that, but a lot of people said it was, and it was the first one. So now you're 0-1 against those four teams, and you've got three more, and the pressure is just going to keep going and going and going until you get a win against one of those top teams. Um, if we beat Arizona and we're 1-1, I think that shifts the momentum back to Duke's court, especially what it would look like to win at Arizona. I think would give you even more momentum than winning a Champions Classic game. Um, so that's the other half of this. There's two sides to every coin. On one side, I'm really not that worried about this Duke team, no matter what way you frame it. But on the other side, you're like, dang, this would have been a good one to get the monkey off our back and just get a big win, and not now you got to sit here also and wait till Saturday while all the media and everything makes a big deal of this loss, and you're going to see yourself slip in the AP poll. I guess you won't see that until when do they put those out? Tuesday, I think, or Monday, Sunday. I don't know. It'll be after the Wofford game, I guess. But you got to sit here all week and think about that loss without getting a chance to get back quick. I just hate that feeling, man. But listen, at the same time, I've said it before. I'm just not that worried about this Duke team as of now. Again, I'll put a pin in this. If Duke doesn't shoot well against Arizona, we're going to start having a conversation about, are we a good 3-point shooting team against bad teams? But as of right now, I think Duke is a great 3-point shooting team. I don't think Duke fans have a ton to worry about. I think you can just chalk this one up to really bad shooting performance and injuries killed us. And Kentucky, look, Kentucky took advantage of their opportunities. They hit 40% from three, which is kind of their game. And they played their game. Duke didn't play theirs. But let's move on to some player highlights. And I think it's got to start with Cooper. And I just want to say this up top. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter talk about the last few possessions with Cooper Flagg, and it's like, look, the kid may have made some mistakes. He turned the ball over twice at the end. He only had 3 turnovers on the game, mind you. Duke actually only turned the ball over 7 times. Really good for a young team. Um, but yeah, look, he turned the ball over. But the kid had 26 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. If you think for a second Cooper Flagg is the reason Duke lost this game, I don't know what sport you're watching. It's like he, he was the reason we were in the game at all. When everybody else kind of looked shy there in the second half, Cooper relished in the moment, man. And there is no question we have an absolute killer in this kid. And as for people talking about the last few possessions of the game, let me just address this too while I'm at it. Everybody wants to talk about the turnovers. Nobody wants to talk about the insanely tough and one he made to tie the game up at 69 and then hit a free throw to go up 70 to 69. This was after Kentucky had stormed back to take the lead. Cooper Flagg makes a tough mid-range jumper through 2 defenders and one, makes it in, makes the free throw to put him up one. And look, Carr dribbles down the court and then gets his own and one off of kind of an inexperienced Common Malawatch. He left his feet when he shouldn't have and fouled him. And Common's going to get better at that. But look, at that point in the game, like that could have easily been the winning shot in this game. If Duke gets a stop there, Common doesn't leave his feet, maybe comes over the block, or Carr just misses it. Everyone's talking about that shot as the game winner. And now all of a sudden we're going to get mad at him because he slips on the baseline, or some Butler comes up behind him, swats the ball out from behind, and it happens to catch his fingertips. Come on, man, that's just that's soft. Like Cooper is Cooper was by far the best player on either team. Proved every bit of doubt anyone had in him wrong. And you want to sit here and talk about how he was playing hero ball at the end. Well, look, if you got 26 and you're shooting 9 for 19, almost 50% from the floor, by the way, he went 1 for 5 from 3. I don't love that number, but that just shows you, like, take out those misses, that just increases his field goal percentage from the floor. Look, at the end of, sometimes hero ball is not always a bad thing. That's a controversial take, but if the game is on the line, I want the ball in Cooper's hands. Sometimes, is he going to take a contested shot? Heck yeah, he is. But we saw at the end of the game, he can make a mid-range shot through 2 guys. He can make a 3 when it's needed, and he can get to the basket at will. He makes smart decisions. He was constantly hunting screens to be guarded by Kobe Brea, which was one of Kentucky's weaker defenders, and he abused that all night. He's smart. If you're like on Twitter ranting about how like Cooper Flagg's just a selfish and playing hero ball, I just don't know what game you're watching. Anyway, Cooper's the player of this game for both teams. I mean, he's the MVP of the Champions Classic. Down the list from there, Con Knipple. I mean, I highlighted it earlier. 1 for 8 from 3. He's going to tell you that's not what he needs to be. But here's the upside on Con. Still finishes with 14 points. He went 5 for 20, and look, 7 of those misses are threes. But the good thing about him is even on an off shooting nights like this, he finds a way to impact the game, man. He had 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals today. He's always the first one to the court diving for loose balls, and he still ended up with 14, second most on the team. So look, but there's easily a world in which like Khan makes 3 more threes. He's 4 for 8, and we're talking about him having him also having a 20-point performance, and Duke wins this game. I think Khan's going to tell you. Khan missed some wide open ones today, and he forget about those. He drills those like they're layups, and he even makes contested ones like they're layups a lot of the time. and he kind of shoots a lot of those kind of half contested threes, and most of them go in, or it feels like they go in at least a 35% rate. And the law of averages just didn't catch up with him tonight. He went for 1 for 8. He has a bad shooting night, and that is a reason Duke lost this game. But what I'm saying with him is that even an off shooting night doesn't stop him from making a positive impact on the game and still getting a lot of points. The kid's a scorer. Tyrese Proctor ended with 12. I think almost all of those in the first half. He hit two big threes in the first half. He went 2 for 5. One of our only kind of like pretty much our singular only like good percentage 3-point shooter on the night. Only 5 shots. But there were times Proctor was taking over in this first half, and I would have liked to seen that more in the second half. Some of that was probably just like opportunistic. Cooper was taking a lot of those drives, which again, as I've said, I don't have a problem with. He made the right decision on like 90% of the times he had the ball, and the ones he didn't, I'll live with that. But again, I would have liked to have seen Proctor get a few more of those looks. Like I would have liked Proctor to shoot some of the shots that Caleb Foster was shooting. I think I think of the guys on this Duke team who you can point to as having the worst game would probably be Caleb Foster. And look, this is no disrespect to him. I think he's a great player, and I don't like talking down about really any college players, but obviously especially Duke guys, because these guys are kids and they're gonna grow to be incredible players. And I find it really hard to rag on these guys who are like 21 years old. Like I think Caleb's a sophomore, so that would have him at what 20 to 21, something like that. 19 maybe even depending on age. I think he's 20 at least. But but yeah, he finishes with 4 points, 0 for 4 from three. It's just like if he's got to hit one of those threes. There was a possession where he missed a wide open three. Malik Brown gets an offensive rebound, kicks it right back to him for an even more wide open three, and he clanks that one like even worse than he did the first one. It was just like after that happened, I was like, this is just unbelievable how bad this team is shooting. And it's like these are catch and shoot wide open threes. This is your bread and butter. And he's missing them. But I think Caleb can respond. But I mean, he missed some of his like in the lane floaters today. He only made 2 shots, which is where his 4 points come from. Uh, he was 0 for 1 on his one free throw attempt. But it's like he just missed a lot of shots he normally makes. Maybe it was fatigue. He was out there playing a lot today, 29 minutes, more than he had the first 2 games, I believe. But man, Caleb's probably the guy you can point to as uh, like he had probably the toughest game, and I hate to say that, Caleb, but I have confidence in Caleb. I just again, it's like when are you? Is there going to be another game this season where Concanipple and Caleb Foster go a combined, what's that, 1 for 12 from three? Like, just think about that. Caleb Foster and Concanipple went 1 for 12 from three. That's your ball game. That's your ball game. Sion James was one of the guys with injuries. He went down with a left shoulder injury. It looked pretty rough. He came back onto the bench, looked okay. They ruled him out for the game, and Shire said he doesn't really know the severity of the injury. We'll keep an eye on that. Sion had some good plays in this game. He finished with 4 points, two driving to the baskets. One was a dunk, one was a layup, but great defense. I thought Sion did what he needed to help us win this game, and I think, again, injuries just sidelined him. I absolutely think Sion would have been in over like a Caleb Foster towards the end of the game for his defense and his shooting. I mean, he didn't take a three in this game, but it was obvious Caleb was cold. And I think that changes this game. Sion can get to the basket as good as anybody. And I think without an injury, he sees more minutes than 13 minutes in this game. Mason Gillis also had 1 shot in this game, 3 rebounds. Kind of didn't make I felt a huge impact. I didn't notice any like big defensive plays from him. Yeah, and then Malik Brown we've talked about already. Didn't have any points. Did have how many rebounds? 8 rebounds, 5 offensive. That's great, but he struggled with fouls, and I thought the fouls he committed really just like were kind of unnecessary, and some of them were probably soft from the ref's perspective. But I think he gave Kentucky some points tonight that he didn't need to, and he wasn't able to come up with his steals he normally gets in this one. He had a couple really good deflections. But yeah, but again, Malik is more experienced guy. I think he'll get it together as well. Uh, yeah, and it's not like we rely on him too much for points. But yeah, that's kind of the player comparison. For Kentucky, again, they were led by Andrew Carr, big man on the inside. And man, other than that, it was a myriad of kind of three guys. But the guy I was most worried about was Kobe Brea. He only finishes with 8. He hit 2 for 4 on his threes. A couple of the other guys hit some threes. But it was kind of like it was almost like death by 1,000 cuts with a lot of their players. Owe finished with 15 points, went 2 for 3 on threes. Um, yeah, it's like they kind of had a somewhat consistent of how they play. I think Carr got more points probably than normal. But they kind of, especially in the second half, they really implemented their will on the game, and Duke wasn't able to do that. I think in large part because their confidence was just shot by the lack of outside shooting. Like if you're going to be an inside-out team, the outside is 50% of that. Um, and I don't really buy into this. Sometimes I buy into the whole like live by the three, die by the three. But I think this Duke team does not totally live by the three. I just think it's a big part of our game. Um, and sometimes if you go 4 for 23 and you hit 17% of your threes, sometimes you just have to shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, we had an off night. Um, again, I'm still confident in Duke. This does put more pressure on us to win the other non-conference games, but let's wait to panic or right the ship on this Duke team until after more of these big games. Again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but if we're sitting here after playing Arizona, Kansas, and Auburn, and we're 3-1 in this 4-game stretch, I think you're happy with that for the most part. Um, so yeah, I think that's all I got to say on this one. This is I'm recording this late at night, right after the game, so forgive me. My thoughts are a little scatterbrained, but that's just an instant reaction. Duke loses to Kentucky, but I think we're going to be fine. And let's see how we do against other big competition because we got Arizona coming up really soon. So let's play Wofford, get them out of there quick, get a tune-up, and then let's move on, go to Arizona, get a win there, and erase this bad memory from our mind. Thanks so much for listening, guys. If you want to help out the show, leave a rating wherever you're listening to, or you can follow me over on Twitter at Duke Blue Central. Been good talking to you guys. Go Blue Devils.